Today I'm joined by Andrew Bartlett, who is Chief Exec of Advice Direct Scotland. I'm speaking to Andrew about vulnerability. Vulnerability is something that we've spoken about on many occasions with the CCA network. Indeed, it's something that's crept up over the last few years, both situational and permanent. And many organisations have adapted their customer services to serve vulnerable customers well. Over the last 6 months, we've learned a lot about how to treat customers differently through this pandemic. And I wondered just what effect this is having on vulnerable customers. So I'd like to ask Andrew, because you're dealing with loads of vulnerable customers. What have you actually found over the last 6 months? Has there been a difference, or is it much the same? What's your experience?
Well, Emery, first of all, I just want to very quickly talk about my staff. So since March, I think it was the 16th, we started working at home. We went slightly early. I was very worried about whether we would still be able to provide the normal great service that we provide. My lack of faith has been proved to be entirely unfounded. The staff have done an absolutely brilliant job at home. Our technology has worked wonderfully well, and we've not had a single minute's downtime now. Like all call centres, normally in the course of a year in the office, we have an incident. We'll touch wood. To date, we've not had one. So that's the first thing I'd like to say, is that the staff have really stepped up, and it's not impacted on our ability to offer a service to customers. Obviously, in terms of our actual customers, we've had lots of people having to seek advice for the very, very first time. People who've normally been in full employment, maybe they've had their own business, and suddenly they're finding that they've got issues which have never presented themselves to them before. For some people, they've just regarded that as a challenge to overcome, and they've come on. It's been a very factual call. We've provided them with information, support, signposting. Maybe we've helped them fill forms in, etc. Others, it's really knocked them on both a physical and a mental level, where they're in a position that they're very uncomfortable with and actually don't know where to turn. And obviously that's been a lot of learning for our agents and how to deal with people in that situation.
Yeah, lots and lots to take in there. And of course, as you say, it's people for the first time, and perhaps would never have previously described themselves as vulnerable, now having to appeal for help, and obviously looking for a lot of empathy in that. Lots of organisations now will be dealing with vulnerable customers, whether they be banks or healthcare companies, insurance companies, many in the CCA network. What advice would you give to those companies?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that every customer is an individual and they've all got a unique story. And I think the second thing is, particularly in moments of stress, people don't want to tell their story once, particularly if it's affecting them emotionally. They don't want to be reliving the emotion time and time again. So it is very much capturing the information and understanding a route forward on that first call. So even if you have to pass someone on to somebody else in the business, they don't have to go through really the trauma. And I don't think trauma is too strong a word, of telling the story a second time, a third time, sometimes a fourth time. It really is understanding that, once somebody's unloaded that information, they really want you to capture it and be able to share it with your colleagues elsewhere in the business, who can get a resolution that's right for them.
What's that meant for the team then at Advice Direct Scotland in terms of training and motivation, coaching, etc.? What have you done around that space?
Well, I'm very lucky. So our head of learning and development, Kevin Watson, is an absolute star on Teams. We're a Teams house. So he's got a really fantastic style. So we have a combination of digital workbooks that people can work through at home in their own time. We dedicate between 5 and 6 every day to training. As you know, Emery, we're a 4-day-a-week business. But Kevin really has, again, stepped up to the plate, thought of new ways of training, recording pieces for people. So for example, if somebody's missed something on a Friday because it's their day off, it's there to catch up. We have libraries that people can dip in and out of. When people have got questions, we just keep a chat running so people can contribute, but also they can see the questions their colleagues are asking and the answers that are being provided. So if they get someone in the next week or so, then they can recall, yeah, that's that's the answer to that question. So it's very much using the technology. We have a quiz on Friday. I am just the schoolmaster. I'm not allowed to ask any questions. But again, we've got some really good prizes for people. They've formed themselves into teams, because obviously we can't have a Christmas do this year. So it's in lieu of that. So unfortunately, only open to Advice Direct Scotland employees, but we have very nice gift vouchers, Echo Dots, and all that to give away.
So many different ideas for how to keep teams happy, motivated, and I think sometimes we're guilty of forgetting that people at the front line have always had to deal with difficult situations, but never more so than now. So great to hear that you're doing that.
Well, yeah. The other thing we have is we have a video on rule. So when you're interacting with your colleagues, you have your video on, because otherwise you will start forgetting what people look like, to be honest. So everybody sees each other several times a day, and I think that is important. It's not about trying to catch people out or anything. It's just that person-to-person contact where you can see them, you can talk to them, you can have a laugh with them, or whatever. But I think that's important, that face-to-face contact still.
Thanks very much. Thanks for that, Andrew.
Pleasure.